The doorbell rang at precisely 11:43 p.m. I remember checking the clock, a habit from my nursing days, noting details automatically. Outside, rain lashed against the windows of my colonial home, the one David and I had purchased 30 years ago, the one we'd raised our children in, the one I now inhabited alone since his heart gave out 4 years prior. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends don't drop by unannounced, especially not this late, not in this weather. So when I peered through the peephole and saw Melissa, my son Jack's wife, or rather, soon-to-be ex-wife, standing there, mascara-streaked tears running down her face and my 3-year-old granddaughter Emma clutching her hand, I felt my stomach twist with both concern and foreboding. I didn't know where else to go, she whispered when I opened the door. Emma's eyes were puffy from crying, her little pink backpack soaked through. He's changed the locks. He says I have until tomorrow to get my things, but tonight I have nowhere. I hesitated only for a moment before stepping aside. Come in, come in. Let's get you both warm and dry. As I wrapped Emma in a towel and heated milk for hot chocolate, Melissa sat at my kitchen table, shoulders slumped, telling me a story of my son I could scarcely reconcile with the boy I raised. According to her, Jack had become controlling, verbally abusive, and finally, had thrown them out in a rage over something so trivial, a dinner she'd burned while trying to manage Emma's tantrum. I just need a few days, she said, her voice small. Just until I can figure something out. You'll stay as long as you need to, I heard myself saying, reaching across to squeeze her cold hand. Both of you. Something like relief, or was it triumph, flickered across her face before dissolving back into gratitude. You're a lifesaver, Catherine. A true mother, unlike mine. That night, as I made up the guest room bed with fresh linens and set up Emma's portable crib that Melissa had somehow managed to grab in her hasty exit, I felt a surge of purpose I hadn't experienced since David died. Someone needed me again. My granddaughter needed protection. And if my son was truly behaving the way Melissa described, then I needed to be the safe harbor for his child, even if it meant going against him. When I called Jack the next morning, his terse response chilled me. She's manipulating you, Mom. Don't let her stay. When I pressed for details, he simply said, you'll see, and hung up. I dismissed his warning as the bitterness of a failing marriage. After all, I had raised a good son, but men sometimes become their worst selves during divorce. I would help Melissa get back on her feet for Emma's sake. Just for a little while. I couldn't have known then that a few days would stretch into weeks, then months. I couldn't have known that I was opening my door to someone who would systematically dismantle the peaceful life I had carefully reconstructed after widowhood. I couldn't have known I was inviting in a predator. By the 3rd week of Melissa and Emma's stay, subtle shifts had begun to reshape my home and routine. At first, I welcomed them. The house felt alive again, filled with a child's laughter and the bustle of younger energy. When Melissa suggested rearranging the living room furniture, just to try something new, I agreed. When she reorganized my kitchen cabinets because it would be more efficient, I thanked her. I didn't mind when she hung new curtains or placed family photos of herself and Emma more prominently than those of my late husband or my other children. This was temporary accommodation, after all, and her touches made the space feel more like home to her. But then came the day I couldn't find my favorite teacup, the bone china one David had given me on our 25th anniversary. Oh, I put it away, Melissa said casually when I asked. It was chipped, and Emma could hurt herself. I've noticed several things around here that aren't child-safe. We should probably do a proper childproofing. It wasn't chipped, I said, certain of it. I would have noticed, I used it every morning. Melissa tilted her head, her expression softening with something like pity. Catherine, I don't want to upset you, but it definitely had a chip on the rim. I wrapped it carefully and put it in the box in the garage with the other fragile items we've moved. Memory can play tricks as we get older. My grandmother was the same way before her dementia diagnosis. I felt a flush of indignation, quickly followed by doubt. Had I missed a chip? At 63, I wasn't ancient, but was I becoming forgetful? That afternoon, I searched through 3 boxes in the garage before finding my teacup, wrapped in newspaper. When I unwrapped it, there it was, a small chip on the rim. I apologized to Melissa that evening. She hugged me, her voice gentle. It's okay. We all miss things sometimes. That night, I dreamed of David. In the dream, he was trying to tell me something important, but I couldn't hear him over the sound of running water. I woke feeling uneasy but couldn't pinpoint why. The next week, my daughter Rebecca came for Sunday dinner, a tradition we'd maintained since her father's passing. Rebecca, my oldest, had always been forthright to the point of bluntness. When Melissa excused herself to put Emma down for a nap, Rebecca leaned across the table. "Mom, what's going on here? The house looks completely different." I glanced around. Yes, there were changes, but nothing drastic. Melissa's just helped brighten things up a bit. Brighten things up? Your gallery wall is gone. Dad's recliner is gone. And since when do you use paper napkins instead of your cloth ones? The cloth ones aren't practical with a toddler, and the recliner was taking up too much space with the playpen. I trailed off, suddenly seeing my home through my daughter's eyes. The changes weren't small at all. And why is Melissa still here? I thought this was a temporary emergency situation. Before I could answer, Melissa returned, all warm smiles and solicitous offers of coffee. The conversation shifted, but throughout the remainder of the visit, I caught Rebecca watching Melissa with narrowed eyes. When she left, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Call me tonight." I never made that call. By evening, Melissa had developed a migraine, and I spent hours sitting with her in a darkened room, bringing cool compresses and the prescription medication she directed me to pick up from the pharmacy. Somehow, in the commotion, my phone disappeared, only to be found behind the washing machine 2 days later, its battery dead. "You must have set it down while doing laundry," Melissa suggested. But I hadn't done laundry that day. Had I? Lately, my certainty about such things was eroding. By the time another Sunday arrived, Rebecca's dinner visit had been cancelled, by me, according to Melissa, who said she'd taken a message while I was gardening. Rebecca said something came up with the kids, Melissa reported. She'll call to reschedule. That call never came, and when I finally reached out, Rebecca's voice was cool. "I thought you didn't want me there, Mom. Melissa said you needed space." A slow chill spread through me as I realized something was very wrong in my house. By the third month, my once active social life had dwindled to nearly nothing. My weekly bridge club, which I'd faithfully attended for 15 years, somehow conflicted with Emma's new naptime schedule. The volunteer work at the library that had structured my Tuesdays since retirement now seemed impossible with Melissa's increasingly frequent emergencies, car troubles, minor health scares, job interview preparations that required my babysitting. "You're such a blessing, Catherine," she would say, eyes wide with gratitude. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Those words, initially warming, began to feel like invisible chains. I found myself constantly on alert, waiting for the next crisis that required my intervention. Meanwhile, Melissa had taken over running the household with an efficiency that should have been helpful but somehow left me feeling increasingly irrelevant. "Don't worry about dinner tonight," she'd say. "You look tired. I've got everything handled." Or, "I've changed your bed sheets. I noticed they hadn't been done in a while." Had it been a while? I couldn't remember. My daily routines, once the backbone of my widowed life, had become hazy and indistinct. Time seemed to slip through my fingers like sand. The changes extended beyond my home. My son Jack no longer visited, according to Melissa. He'd made threats that made her uncomfortable having him in her safe space. My youngest son, Michael, who lived across the country, had been told by someone, Melissa implied it was me, that visits were too disruptive to Emma's routine. But I never said that. I protested when Michael called, hurt evident in his voice. "Mom, it came from your email address," he said. "You wrote that you were overwhelmed and needed space from family visits for a while." I hadn't written any such email. But when I checked my sent folder later, there it was, a message I had no memory of composing, outlining in perfect detail why I needed solitude. The timestamp showed it had been sent during an afternoon when I distinctly remembered napping. That night, I searched for my old address book, the leather-bound one with everyone's contact information. It was gone from its place in my desk drawer. When I asked Melissa, she looked confused. "You gave that to me weeks ago," she said. "You said it was outdated and told me to transfer the important numbers to your phone. Don't you remember? We were sorting through papers together." Had we? I remembered sorting papers, but not giving her my address book. Yet there it was in her dresser drawer when I checked, many pages missing, including those with my closest friends' information. Sleep became elusive. I would lie awake, trying to catalog what else might have disappeared or changed. Was my perception truly failing? Was I experiencing early dementia, as Melissa had begun to gently suggest? She'd left pamphlets about memory care on the kitchen counter, ostensibly to help me stay informed about options. One morning, I found myself standing in my own kitchen, unable to remember where the coffee filters were kept. Had they always been in that drawer? Had I always used this particular coffee brand? Small dislocations accumulated until I felt like a stranger in my own home. The bathroom mirror reflected someone I barely recognized, a woman with deeply etched worry lines, dark circles beneath her eyes, hair that had somehow lost its careful styling. When had I last visited the salon? Melissa had been scheduling my appointments lately, but I couldn't remember actually going. That afternoon, I received a call from my bank. There were concerns about unusual activity on my account, several large withdrawals and transfers over the past month. "Did you authorize a payment of $5,000 to Bright Future Investments?" the bank representative asked. I had not. But when I confronted Melissa, she produced a handwritten note in what appeared to be my handwriting, authorizing her to make investment decisions for Emma's college fund. "You were so enthusiastic about it," she said, her eyes wide and innocent. "We discussed it at length. Catherine, I'm worried about you. These memory lapses are getting more frequent." That night, I lay awake until dawn, a terrible suspicion forming. I needed help, but who could I trust? My children were distant, my friends unreachable. Even my doctor, had I seen her recently? Melissa mentioned appointments, but I couldn't remember attending them. I was alone in a house that no longer felt like mine, with a woman who smiled like a daughter but watched me like a warden. The day everything changed began like many others, with confusion and a growing sense of dread. I awoke to find Melissa sitting at the foot of my bed, a concerned expression on her face. "Catherine, you were wandering the house again last night," she said softly. "I found you in the kitchen at 3 a.m., trying to make coffee. Don't you remember?" I didn't. But these memory gaps had become so common that I merely nodded, accepting this new evidence of my apparent decline. "I've been talking with Dr. Winters," she continued, referencing a geriatric specialist I supposedly had been seeing. "He thinks we should consider memory care options sooner rather than later. Just for your safety." Memory care? The word sent a cold jolt through me. "You mean a nursing home?" "A specialized facility," she corrected gently. "Where professionals can monitor you. It's not safe for you to be alone anymore, and with Emma starting preschool soon, I can't be here all the time to watch you." "Watch me. Not help me. Watch me." "I'd like to speak with Dr. Winters myself," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Something flickered in Melissa's eyes, annoyance quickly masked by concern. "Of course. I have his card downstairs. But first, you should take your medication. I've got it all ready with your breakfast." Medication. Another new development of the past month. Little blue pills that left me foggy and compliant, prescribed for anxiety and memory support. I'd never seen the bottles. Melissa managed everything. "I'll take it after I eat," I said, rising from the bed with deliberate steadiness. "I can bring breakfast up," she offered quickly. "You should rest." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "I mean, I'd like to come downstairs. Get some air in the garden perhaps." Melissa hesitated, then nodded. "Let me help you with your robe." As she turned to retrieve it, my gaze fell on her open purse on my dresser. Visible inside was my cell phone, which I thought was charging in the kitchen, and a prescription bottle with my name on it. In that moment, something cleared in my mind. With Melissa's back turned, I quickly palmed the prescription bottle and slipped it into my robe pocket when she held it open for me. Downstairs, I made a show of eating the oatmeal she prepared, but when she turned to answer Emma's call from the other room, I quickly deposited the blue pill into my napkin. As Melissa attended to Emma, I examined the prescription bottle I'd taken. Not memory medication, but powerful sedatives, typically prescribed for severe insomnia or pre-surgical anxiety. My hands trembled as I returned the bottle to my pocket. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being drugged. The realization should have terrified me, but instead, a strange calm descended. The fog that had enveloped me for months began to lift, replaced by a sharp clarity and purpose I hadn't felt in years. "Melissa," I called, my voice steady, "could you bring me the phone? I'd like to call Rebecca." "Oh, she's on that yoga retreat this weekend, remember? No phones allowed." Melissa reappeared, Emma on her hip. "But I can call her for you tomorrow if you'd like." Another lie. Rebecca hated yoga. "That would be lovely, thank you," I smiled, playing along. "And could you bring me my reading glasses from the study? I thought I might read in the garden." The moment she left the kitchen, I moved quickly to the drawer where we kept spare keys, grabbing the set to my car, which I supposedly hadn't driven in months due to concerning incidents I couldn't recall. Throughout the day, I maintained the pretense of taking my medication while secretly flushing the pills. By evening, my head was clearer than it had been in weeks. I watched Melissa with new eyes, noting the calculating way she monitored my movements, how she subtly directed every conversation, how she positioned herself between me and any means of outside contact. After dinner, as Melissa put Emma to bed, I quietly entered what had once been my home office but had been converted to Melissa's workspace. There, in neat folders, I discovered the truth: bank statements showing systematic transfers from my accounts to hers, emails drafted in my name to family members, canceling visits and expressing increasingly paranoid thoughts, medical forms with forged signatures authorizing Melissa as my healthcare proxy, and most chillingly, paperwork for power of attorney, partially completed, awaiting only final signatures. She wasn't just isolating me. She was erasing me, preparing to take everything: my home, my money, my identity, while convincing everyone, including me, that I was no longer competent. As I photographed these documents with the camera on my car key fob, thankfully a newer model with this capability, I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I turned to find Melissa in the doorway, her expression no longer maternal or concerned, but cold and assessing. "What are you doing in here, Catherine?" she asked. Gone was the solicitous tone, replaced by something harder. I straightened up, clutching the key fob in my palm. "Just looking for some old photos. Emma asked about her grandfather earlier." Melissa's eyes narrowed, taking in the open drawer, my too alert expression. "You didn't take your medication tonight, did you?" "I must have forgotten," I said, attempting to move past her. She blocked my path. "I think you need to rest. You're looking confused again." "I'm not confused, Melissa," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "Not anymore." Something shifted in her eyes, recognition that the game had changed. Her hand moved to her pocket, where I knew she kept the bottle of sedatives. "Let me help you upstairs," she insisted, reaching for my arm. I pulled away. "No. I think I'll call Jack first. It's been too long since we spoke." "Jack doesn't want to speak with you," she said, voice hardening. "None of them do. I'm the only one who cares enough to stay, to help you through this difficult time." "This difficult time that you've manufactured?" I asked quietly. "With pills and lies and isolation?" For a moment, she looked startled, then her expression smoothed into something almost pitying. "Catherine, listen to yourself. These paranoid delusions are exactly why Dr. Winters is concerned. Why everyone is concerned. There is no Dr. Winters, is there?" I challenged. Melissa sighed dramatically. "I'm calling the emergency number he gave me. You're having an episode." As she reached for her phone, I made my decision. With a strength that surprised us both, I pushed past her and ran for the front door. "Catherine," she called after me, her voice shrill. "Don't do this." "You're not safe out there alone." But I was already outside, keys in hand, moving faster than I had in years toward my garage. Behind me, I could hear Melissa on the phone, not with any doctor, I was certain, but likely with a locksmith, or worse, police, spinning tales of a confused elderly woman. I had minutes, at most, to reclaim my life. The engine of my sedan roared to life, a sound that felt like freedom after months of enforced dependency. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Melissa burst from the house, Emma clutched to her chest like a shield. She made a show of looking distraught, but her eyes, those eyes met mine through the windshield with pure, calculated fury. I drove without a clear destination at first, hands shaking on the wheel, mind racing through options. I couldn't go to the police yet, not without sounding exactly like the confused elder Melissa had been portraying me as. With no proof beyond the photos on my key fob, it would be her word against mine, and she had spent months building her case. Rebecca. I needed to reach Rebecca first. At a gas station 10 miles away, I used the pay phone, grateful they still existed, and called my daughter's number from memory. When her answering machine picked up, I left a message trying to sound calm. "Rebecca, it's Mom. I'm okay, but I need to see you immediately. Can you meet me at Riverside Park, at our spot? Please come alone. I'll explain everything." Our spot, the bench overlooking the river where we'd sat through her teenage heartbreaks, where we'd scattered some of David's ashes. A place Melissa wouldn't know about. As I hung up, I noticed a police cruiser pulling into the gas station and quickly returned to my car, heart pounding. Had Melissa already reported me missing? I took back roads to the park, constantly checking my rearview mirror. The park was quiet at dusk, just a few joggers on the paths. I sat on our bench, watching the water flow past, trying to organize my thoughts. I needed to be coherent, precise. If I sounded confused or agitated, would only reinforce Melissa's narrative. An hour passed. The park emptied as darkness fell. Had Rebecca received my message? Would she come? Or had Melissa already poisoned that relationship beyond repair? Headlights swept the parking lot. I tensed, ready to flee if necessary, but then recognized Rebecca's sensible SUV. She emerged, looking worried, scanning the darkness. When she spotted me, her face registered first relief, then concern as she hurried over. "Mom? What's going on?" "I got a call from Melissa saying you'd wandered off during an episode. She's frantic." Of course she'd call Rebecca. Always controlling the narrative. "Sit with me," I said, patting the bench. "I need you to listen, really listen, before you make any judgments." For the next 30 minutes, I laid out everything. The gradual isolation, the missing personal items, the drugged food, the forged documents. I showed her the photos on my key fob. As I spoke, Rebecca's expression shifted from skepticism to horror. "She told us you were having cognitive episodes," Rebecca said finally. "That the doctor had advised limiting stress and visitors. Every time I tried to see you, there was some reason why it wasn't a good day. And the email saying I wanted space? I never fully believed that came from you," Rebecca admitted. "It didn't sound like you at all. But Melissa was so convincing about your decline. We thought we were respecting your needs by staying away. She's been isolating me while systematically taking over my finances," I said. "I believe she planned to have me declared incompetent and take everything, the house, my savings, all of it." Rebecca pulled out her phone. "We need to call Jack and Michael right now." For the first time in months, warmth spread through my chest. My daughter believed me. I wasn't alone anymore. The next 24 hours unfolded in a blur of activity. My children rallied around me with a fierceness that brought tears to my eyes. Jack arrived from across town within an hour of Rebecca's call. Michael booked the first flight from Seattle. We spent the night at Rebecca's house, making calls, gathering evidence, building a case. A visit to my doctor the next morning confirmed no prescriptions had been issued for the medications Melissa had been giving me. My bank provided records of the unauthorized transfers. My attorney was appalled at the forged power of attorney documents. By afternoon, we had enough evidence for the police to take action. But there was still the matter of Emma, my granddaughter, the innocent in all this. "We need to be careful," Jack said, his face grim. "Melissa is using Emma as leverage. She knows I'll do anything to protect my daughter." It was Jack who devised the plan. A text message from my phone, which Rebecca had recovered from Melissa through a ruse, inviting her to bring Emma to a meeting with the alleged Dr. Winters at a local restaurant to discuss care options. Melissa, perhaps sensing her control slipping, agreed readily. The restaurant was public enough to be safe but private enough for what needed to happen. I arrived early with Rebecca and a police detective who had taken our case. Jack waited outside with Child Protective Services on standby. Michael maintained phone contact from the airport, his flight delayed but his support unwavering. When Melissa walked in with Emma, her face registered first confusion, then calculation as she spotted me sitting clear-eyed beside my daughter and a stranger. But ever the performer, she quickly composed herself. "Catherine. Thank goodness you're safe," she exclaimed, hurrying over. "We've been so worried. Where's Dr. Winters?" "There is no Dr. Winters," I said calmly. "This is Detective Carson. He'd like to ask you some questions about my bank accounts and medications." Melissa's facade cracked for just an instant before she rallied, turning tearfully to the detective. "My mother-in-law has been experiencing severe cognitive decline." "Whatever she's told you." "Miss Patterson," the detective interrupted, "we have documentation of forged signatures, unauthorized bank transfers, and administration of unprescribed sedatives. We can discuss this at the station." As if sensing the shift in power, Emma began to whimper, reaching for me rather than her mother. Melissa's expression hardened as she pulled Emma closer. "You can't prove anything," she hissed, her mask finally dropping completely. "Who would believe you over me? I've spent months establishing your instability." "That's why we recorded this conversation," Rebecca said quietly, nodding toward the small device on the table. "And everything you've said since you walked in." Melissa's face drained of color as she realized she was trapped. When Jack entered with the CPS worker, she finally broke, her carefully constructed persona crumbling into raw fury. "You ungrateful bitch," she spat at me. "After everything I did for you, giving you purpose, company, making your empty life meaningful again. By stealing from me? Drugging me? Isolating me from my family?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "That's not kindness, Melissa. That's abuse." What followed was difficult for everyone, especially Emma. The police arrested Melissa on multiple charges. Emma sobbed in confusion as the CPS worker gently explained she would be staying with her father while things were sorted out. Jack's eyes were wet as he held his daughter, murmuring reassurances. Later, we would learn the full extent of Melissa's deception. She had executed similar schemes twice before with elderly employers when she worked as a home health aide in another state, changing her name each time. She had targeted me not just because of access to Emma, but because I was a widow with assets and a strained relationship with my son following their separation, the perfect vulnerable mark. 6 months later, my home was mine again. The walls had been repainted, furniture restored to where I wanted it, David's photographs returned to their places of honor. The garden, neglected during Melissa's occupation, bloomed with new plantings, a symbolic fresh start. The legal proceedings against Melissa continued, complicated but moving toward justice. She would likely serve prison time for elder abuse, fraud, and several other charges. My financial losses were substantial but not catastrophic, and my attorney was confident much could be recovered. The emotional healing proved more challenging. For weeks after Melissa's arrest, I would wake in the night, panicked, certain I had only dreamed my escape. I installed new locks, changed all my passwords, and kept a journal by my bed to record each day's events, a bulwark against any future attempt to make me doubt my own mind. My relationships with my children had been changed by the ordeal, damaged in some ways but strengthened in others. Jack carried tremendous guilt for having brought Melissa into our lives, despite my assurances that he too had been deceived. Rebecca visited more frequently, sometimes staying overnight, her presence both comfort and protection. Michael extended his visit for a month, working remotely to help me restore the house and my sense of security. Most precious of all was the time with Emma. Jack had been granted full custody, and he made sure I saw my granddaughter regularly. At first, Emma had been confused and withdrawn, asking repeatedly for "Mommy." But children are remarkably resilient. With therapy and patience, she began to flourish again. One warm afternoon, as Emma and I planted marigolds in the garden, her small hands patting the soil with serious concentration, she looked up at me. "Grandma, are you still sick in your brain?" she asked innocently. I set down my trowel, giving her my full attention. "No, sweetheart. I was never really sick. Sometimes people tell lies to get what they want. Your mommy told lies about me being sick." Emma nodded, processing this with a child's straightforward acceptance. "Daddy says telling lies hurts people." "Yes, it does." "I won't tell lies," she declared firmly, then returned to her planting. That evening, sitting on my porch with a cup of tea, in my chipped anniversary cup, I reflected on how thoroughly Melissa had exploited my vulnerabilities, my loneliness after David's death, my desire to be needed, my fears of aging and decline. She had identified these weaknesses with predatory precision, using them to construct a cage around me so gradually I barely noticed until I was trapped. But she had miscalculated one thing: the bonds of real family. Not the performance of devotion she had mastered, but the messy, complicated, sometimes distant but ultimately unbreakable connections I shared with my children. In the end, those bonds had saved me. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. For an instant, old fear fluttered in my chest, a Pavlovian response to that sound that might never fully disappear. But I rose steadily, checking through the peephole out of new habit. Rebecca stood there with a casserole dish and a bottle of wine. Behind her, I could see Jack's car pulling into the driveway, Emma waving excitedly from her car seat. Michael's voice emerged from my phone, still connected from his daily call from Seattle. I opened the door wide, welcoming them in, to my home, my real home, filled once again with authentic love and honest connections. The healing wasn't complete, might never be. But as I watched my family gather around my table, I knew with bone-deep certainty that I had reclaimed something precious: trust in myself and the truth of my own experience. That night, for the first time in nearly a year, I slept without fear, without doubt, in the peaceful darkness of a house that was, once again, unmistakably mine.